What if the greatest act of rebellion in cosmic history wasn't born from pride, but from love? What if angels, beings of pure light and divine order, chose eternal damnation not for themselves, but for us? Picture this: Mount Hermon, that towering peak where 3 nations now meet, shrouded in mist and mystery. On that sacred mountain, 200 angels gather in a circle of supernatural fire. Their leader Shemihaza raises his voice above the wind. "We shall descend," he declares, "and we shall teach them." But here's the paradox that should make your spine tingle. These weren't demons or fallen spirits drunk on chaos. These were the Watchers, heaven's appointed guardians, tasked with observing humanity from afar. Their job was simple: watch, but never interfere, never teach, never love. And yet, watching wasn't enough. Today, we're going to explore one of history's most haunting questions. When does knowledge become corruption? When does the gift of wisdom transform into a curse that echoes through millennia? From the ancient Book of Enoch to our modern struggles with artificial intelligence, nuclear power, and biotechnology, the story of the Watchers offers a mirror into our own relationship with forbidden knowledge and the terrible price we pay for progress without wisdom. Long before Christianity painted its stark portrait of fallen angels, long before Milton's Paradise Lost gave us the proud Lucifer, there were the Watchers. Not rebels driven by ego, but guardians torn between duty and compassion. The Book of Enoch, one of the most influential texts you've probably never heard of, tells their story with a complexity that would make Shakespeare weep. But who exactly were these Watchers? In the celestial hierarchy described in Enoch, they weren't just any angels. They were the Grigori, literally those who watch in Aramaic. Imagine cosmic sentinels posted at the boundaries between heaven and earth, tasked with one sacred duty: observe the development of humanity, but never, under any circumstances, interfere. For centuries they watched. They saw humans shivering in caves, dying from simple infections, living brutal, short lives, dominated by fear and ignorance. They watched civilizations rise and fall, watched children starve, while the knowledge to save them burned unused in their celestial minds. Here's where the story becomes achingly human. What happens when a guardian is forced to watch suffering they have the power to prevent? What happens when love becomes stronger than law? The leader of this cosmic rebellion wasn't some monstrous demon, but Semjaza, whose very name echoes the sacred mystery of divine sight. The text describes him as reluctant, almost tragic. He knows what they're about to do will damn them all. "I fear," he tells his fellow Watchers, "that you will not agree to do this deed, and I alone shall have to pay the penalty of a great sin." But Azazel, the most infamous among them, speaks for many when he responds with words that echo through every technological revolution. The knowledge we possess was meant to elevate, not to remain hidden. Think about that for a moment. Here were beings who possessed the secrets of metallurgy, astronomy, medicine, and writing, all the tools that would lift humanity from its primitive existence. And they were forbidden to share them. Why? What made this knowledge so dangerous that even angels were prohibited from teaching it? The traditional answer is simple. It wasn't humanity's time. Knowledge without wisdom, power without maturity, leads to destruction. But what if there's more to it than that? What if the prohibition itself was the test? 200 angels made their choice on Mount Hermon. They would descend, they would teach, and they would accept the consequences. It's one of history's first recorded acts of civil disobedience, cosmic civil disobedience. But here's a question that should haunt every scientist, every innovator, every person who's ever discovered something powerful. Were the Watchers heroes or villains? Were they acting out of love or lust? And why does their story feel so terrifyingly relevant in our age of artificial intelligence and genetic engineering? The Book of Enoch itself carries mysteries that mirror its content. Composed in the 3rd to 2nd centuries BCE, 1 Enoch was widely read in early Judaism and Christianity. The Epistle of Jude cites it, yet was later excluded from most canons, surviving mainly in Ethiopic manuscripts where it remains canonical today. Why was this text suppressed? What made the story of the Watchers so dangerous that it had to be buried? The answer might lie in what they taught humanity, and what that teaching cost both angels and mortals alike. The descent wasn't chaotic. It was organized, deliberate, almost academic in its precision. Each Watcher brought a specific curriculum, a particular slice of cosmic knowledge that would forever alter human destiny. But what exactly did they teach? And why were these specific arts deemed too dangerous for mortal minds? Azazel, the most infamous among them, became humanity's first weapons manufacturer. He taught the forging of swords, knives, and shields. But here's what's fascinating and terrifying about his instruction. He didn't just teach metallurgy. He taught the beautification that comes with violence. Cosmetics, jewelry, the art of making oneself attractive while wielding deadly power. Think about that combination. Beauty and brutality, elegance and destruction, inextricably linked from the very beginning of human technology. Is it coincidence that in our modern world, the most sophisticated weapons are often described as beautiful in their precision? That military technology drives advances in everything from computers to cosmetics. Barakiel took a different path. He taught astrology, not the simplified horoscopes we know today, but the mathematical prediction of celestial movements, the calculation of time itself, the mapping of seasons and agricultural cycles. This wasn't mere fortune-telling. This was the birth of systematic observation, the foundation of all science. But why would astronomical knowledge be forbidden? Perhaps because it gave humans the power to predict, to plan beyond their immediate survival, to see patterns in the cosmic order that were meant to remain mysterious. When you can predict the movement of stars, you begin to question the arbitrary nature of divine will. Kokobel specialized in the constellations, not just their names, but their deeper meanings, their connections to earthly events. Imagine ancient humans suddenly able to navigate by stars, to time their plantings and harvests with precision, to see their place in a vast ordered cosmos. The psychological shift must have been staggering. Then there was Penemu, perhaps the most revolutionary teacher of all, he gave humanity writing, not just the ability to scratch marks on stones, but systematic writing, the preservation of knowledge across generations, the creation of permanent memory outside the human mind. Consider the magnitude of that gift. Before writing, knowledge died with its possessor. Wisdom was fragile, limited, constantly threatened by death and forgetfulness. After writing, humans became capable of cumulative learning, of building knowledge across centuries and continents. But here's the darker implication. Writing also made possible the permanent recording of lies, the codification of hatred, the systematization of oppression. Every technology carries within it the seeds of both creation and destruction. What's remarkable about the Enoch text is how precisely it identifies the double-edged nature of each gift. Metallurgy enables both farming tools and weapons of war. Astronomy enables both navigation and the hubris of believing humans can read divine will in the stars. Writing enables both wisdom and propaganda. But perhaps the most intriguing contrast wasn't among the rebels at all. Raphael stands for authorized healing, the mender of bodies and worlds, while Uriel governs the luminaries and calendar, teaching lawful cycles and right timing. Their knowledge elevates without corrupting, heals without harming. What's the difference? Why are Raphael's and Uriel's teachings sacred while Azazel's are forbidden? The answer might lie not in the knowledge itself, but in its timing, its context, its relationship to wisdom. The difference isn't the data, it's the timing and formation. Raphael heals after compassion is learned. Uriel reveals cycles to those who've learned to live by them. Their knowledge comes with built-in ethical frameworks, with an understanding of consequences and responsibilities. The Watcher's knowledge, by contrast, comes without context, without the spiritual development necessary to wield it wisely. It's technical knowledge, divorced from ethical understanding, power without responsibility, capability without wisdom. We live in an age where capability advances faster than conscience. Teenagers can learn to synthesize dangerous chemicals from YouTube videos. Artificial intelligence can generate propaganda more persuasive than anything human minds have conceived. Genetic engineering capabilities spread faster than our ethical frameworks can evolve. The Watcher's story asks us, what happens when technical capability outpaces moral development? The answer depends on choices we're making right now. But there's another question hidden in this ancient tale. Were the Watchers themselves equipped with the wisdom to judge humanity's readiness? Or were they, despite their angelic nature, making the same mistake they accused heaven of making, deciding from on high what mortals could and couldn't handle? The story of divine beings defying cosmic order to benefit humanity isn't unique to Hebrew tradition. It echoes across cultures with a consistency that's either coincidental or revelatory of something deep in human consciousness. But what if these aren't separate myths at all? What if they're different cultural memories of the same primordial truth about the nature of knowledge and rebellion? Consider Prometheus, the Titan who stole fire from the gods and gave it to shivering humans. At first glance, his story seems simpler than the Watchers, one gift instead of many, one rebel instead of 200. But look closer, and the parallels become unnerving. Prometheus, like Shemahaza, acts from compassion. He sees humans living like ants in sunless caves, and his heart breaks for their ignorance and suffering. The fire he steals isn't just literal flame, it's the spark of civilization itself, the tool that enables all other technologies. Sound familiar? And like the Watchers, Prometheus pays a terrible price for his compassion. Chained to a rock, his liver eternally devoured by an eagle, regenerating only to be torn apart again. The punishment fits the crime in its own terrible logic. He gave humans the power to transform their world, so his own body becomes locked in an endless cycle of transformation and destruction. But here's where the Greek version becomes even more interesting. Prometheus had a brother, Epimetheus, whose name means afterthought. While Prometheus stole fire for humanity, Epimetheus accepted a different gift from the gods, Pandora, the first woman, and her infamous box. Now we're in familiar territory. Two divine gifts to humanity, one stolen in rebellion, one given by the gods themselves. Prometheus brings knowledge and technology. Pandora brings all the troubles that knowledge creates. Hope remains in the box, but so do death, disease, and discord. It's almost as if the Greek myth is asking the same question as the Book of Enoch. Is enlightenment worth the cost? Are some gifts too dangerous to give? And once given, can they ever be taken back? The parallels extend beyond Greece. In Mesopotamian tradition, the Apokalips, 7 sages sent by the god Ea, taught humanity the arts of civilization. But unlike the Watchers, they were authorized teachers, divine gifts, rather than divine rebels. Yet even these authorized gift givers eventually became suspect, blamed for corrupting human purity with too much knowledge too quickly. In Hindu tradition, the Daityas and Asuras, beings that Western translations often call demons, are often portrayed as rivals of the Devas, whose quests for power and insight disrupt cosmic balance. Another version of the ambiguous benefactor pattern repeats: divine knowledge, contested transmission, cosmic consequences. But perhaps the most fascinating parallel comes from Hermetic tradition, where the figure of Hermes Trismegistus, thrice great Hermes, bridges the gap between divine and human knowledge. Neither fully rebel nor fully authorized, Hermes teaches the principle of as above, so below, the idea that earthly knowledge mirrors celestial truth. What makes the Hermetic tradition unique is its emphasis on graduated instruction. Knowledge isn't stolen or simply given. It's earned through spiritual development, revealed in stages, as the student proves capable of handling each level responsibly. It's as if the Hermetic tradition learned from the mistakes of both the authorized and unauthorized approaches. This brings us to a crucial question. Is the problem with forbidden knowledge the knowledge itself, or the manner of its transmission? Would the arts taught by the Watchers have been less dangerous if they'd been revealed gradually, with proper spiritual context, integrated into a framework of wisdom and responsibility? Consider how this plays out in our modern world. Nuclear physics isn't inherently evil, but when the knowledge spreads faster than the ethical frameworks to contain it, we get both power plants and weapons of mass destruction. Genetic engineering isn't inherently corrupting, but when the technical capability outpaces our understanding of consequences, we face both miraculous cures and existential risks. The internet isn't inherently destructive, but when the power to broadcast information globally becomes available to anyone with a smartphone, we get both unprecedented access to knowledge and unprecedented opportunities for manipulation and harm. But here's what all these mythic parallels suggest. The tension between knowledge and wisdom isn't a flaw in the system, it's a feature. It's how consciousness evolves, how civilizations grow, how individuals mature. The question isn't whether we should have forbidden knowledge, but how we integrate it responsibly. What if the Watchers weren't villains or heroes, but necessary agents of cosmic evolution? What if their rebellion, their punishment, and even their ultimate redemption were all part of a larger pattern that we're still living out today? Every scientist faces the Watcher's dilemma. Do I publish this discovery that could revolutionize medicine, but also enable bioweapons? Every technologist faces Prometheus's choice. Do I release this tool that could liberate humanity, but also be used for oppression? Every educator faces Penemew's question. Do I teach this knowledge that could enlighten students, but also corrupt their innocence? The myths don't offer simple answers, but they do offer something more valuable: the recognition that we're not the first to face these choices, and we won't be the last. The tension between knowledge and wisdom is as old as consciousness itself. The transformation didn't happen overnight. At first, according to the Book of Enoch, the Watcher's gifts seemed unambiguously good. Humans learned to forge tools that made agriculture more efficient, to navigate by stars that made trade possible, to write symbols that made complex societies sustainable. The early results must have seemed miraculous: longer lives, better health, greater prosperity, the emergence of civilization itself. But then something shifted. The text describes it with a phrase that should chill anyone living in our information age. And there arose much godlessness, and they committed fornication, and they were led astray, and became corrupt in all their ways. What does it mean for knowledge itself to become corrupting? The answer lies in what the Watchers taught versus what they failed to teach. Azazel showed humans how to forge weapons, but not how to control the anger that makes weapons deadly. He taught the arts of beauty, but not the wisdom to see beauty that goes deeper than appearance. Think about that metallurgy lesson for a moment. In skilled hands with proper context, metalworking enables plowshares, cooking vessels, tools for building and healing. But the same knowledge, divorced from ethical frameworks, enables swords, chains, instruments of torture. The technique is identical. The application reveals everything about the student's spiritual development. Barakiel's astronomical knowledge followed the same pattern. Teaching humans to track celestial cycles could enable better agriculture, more accurate calendars, improved navigation. But the same knowledge, misapplied, becomes the foundation for fatalistic astrology, the abdication of personal responsibility to cosmic forces, the belief that stars control human destiny rather than inform human choices. The text is brutally specific about what went wrong. Penemew's gift of writing, initially liberating, became the means for recording every kind of sin. Think about what that means. Before writing, harmful knowledge died with its possessor. Hatred, techniques of manipulation, methods of oppression, all were limited by human memory and mortality. Writing changed everything. Suddenly, the worst human impulses could be preserved, systematized, passed down through generations. The same tool that enabled the preservation of wisdom also enabled the codification of evil. But here's the deeper corruption that the text identifies. The knowledge itself began to generate pride. And as men perished, they cried, and their cry went up to heaven. Not because the knowledge was useless, but because it made them feel godlike without actually making them wise. This is the pattern we see repeated throughout human history. Every major technological advance initially appears to solve human problems, then reveals new problems we didn't know we had. The printing press spreads literacy and enlightenment, and also enables propaganda and mass manipulation. The internet connects humanity and democratizes information, and also enables surveillance and disinformation on unprecedented scales. But the Book of Enoch suggests something even more troubling. Technique corrupts not just through its misuse, but through its very nature as unauthorized teaching. There's something about gaining power without earning it through spiritual development that fundamentally distorts the human relationship to truth. Consider the difference between Raphael's authorized healing and Azazel's forbidden gifts. Raphael teaches medicine to those who have developed compassion. Uriel reveals celestial cycles to those who understand the seasons of growth and rest, both operating within frameworks that recognize the sanctity of life. Their knowledge comes embedded in ethical context, integrated into a worldview that recognizes responsibility alongside capability. The Watcher's knowledge, by contrast, arrives disconnected from wisdom traditions, divorced from spiritual context, separated from the ethical frameworks that make power safe. It's information without transformation, technique without understanding, capability without responsibility. We're living through this exact dynamic today. Consider how artificial intelligence is developing. The technical capability to create systems that can manipulate human behavior, generate convincing falsehoods, or automate warfare is advancing exponentially. But our understanding of how to integrate these capabilities responsibly, how to maintain human agency and dignity in an AI-saturated world, is lagging far behind. Or consider biotechnology. We can edit genes with unprecedented precision, but our understanding of the ecological and social consequences of those edits is still primitive. We have the power to reshape life itself, but not necessarily the wisdom to wield that power without causing unforeseen destruction. The pattern is identical to what the Watchers created: technical knowledge advancing faster than ethical development, capability outpacing wisdom, power preceding responsibility. But here's what makes the Enoch text particularly relevant to our moment. It doesn't simply condemn the knowledge as evil. Instead, it suggests that the corruption comes from the separation of knowledge from its proper context. The gifts themselves aren't inherently destructive. They become destructive when divorced from the spiritual development necessary to use them wisely. This points toward a crucial insight about forbidden knowledge. It's not forbidden because it's evil, but because it's dangerous when accessed prematurely. Like a powerful medicine that heals when given at the right dose and time, but kills when administered incorrectly. These arts require not just technical understanding, but spiritual maturity. Which raises the ultimate question: is there a way to integrate powerful knowledge responsibly? Can we find a path between the naive preservation of ignorance and the reckless acceleration of capability? The text suggests there might be, but it requires recognizing that true education involves transformation, not just information transfer. The corruption of the Watcher's gifts wasn't inevitable. It was the result of separating knowledge from wisdom, technique from ethics, power from responsibility. Understanding this distinction might be our only hope for avoiding their fate. The response from heaven wasn't immediate, but when it came, it was absolute. The Book of Enoch describes a divine intervention so complete, so precisely calibrated, that it reads less like angry punishment and more like cosmic surgery. The careful removal of a cancer before it could destroy the entire body of creation. But what exactly was the crime? And why did the punishment take the specific forms it did? The Archangel Uriel delivers the divine judgment with words that should resonate in any age of rapid technological change. You have done a great destruction on the earth, and you shall have no peace nor forgiveness of sin. But notice what the text doesn't say. It doesn't condemn the Watchers for their compassion, their love for humanity, or even their desire to help. The condemnation focuses on something more subtle and more terrifying. They disrupted the proper order of development. Each punishment mirrors the specific transgression in ways that reveal deep insights about the nature of knowledge and responsibility. Azazel, who taught metallurgy and cosmetics, is bound in the desert of Dudael, buried under rough stones in a place where no beauty can flourish, where no refined techniques can survive. His punishment isn't arbitrary cruelty. It's the logical consequence of teaching surface beauty divorced from inner development. Semjaza, the leader who organized the rebellion out of love for humanity, faces a different fate. Like the other chiefs, he's bound and held to await judgment, seeing what their gifts unleashed, yet unable to intervene. It's a punishment that forces contemplation, that creates perpetual awareness of consequences. But here's what's most striking about the divine response. It doesn't simply punish the rebellious angels. It also implements a comprehensive educational reform program for humanity. New angels are appointed to teach the proper arts in the proper sequence. Healing comes before weapons, agriculture before warfare, writing integrated with wisdom traditions rather than separated from them. The message is clear. The problem wasn't that humans received divine knowledge, but that they received it in the wrong way, at the wrong time, from unauthorized teachers who themselves lacked the wisdom to contextualize their gifts properly. This points to a sophisticated understanding of how consciousness develops. Just as a child must learn to walk before learning to run, must develop emotional regulation before being given sharp tools, humanity apparently needed to develop certain spiritual capabilities before being entrusted with certain forms of knowledge. But why? What makes some knowledge inherently dangerous to premature recipients? The text suggests several answers. First, powerful knowledge without corresponding wisdom creates pride. The illusion that technique equals understanding, that capability equals righteousness. The Watcher's students began to see themselves as gods because they possessed godlike tools, but they lacked the actual spiritual development that would make such tools safe. Second, uncontextualized knowledge becomes disconnected from ethical frameworks. When you learn to forge weapons without learning about justice, when you master manipulation without understanding love, when you gain power without developing responsibility, the knowledge itself becomes corrupting. Third, unauthorized teaching creates dependency rather than true development. The humans who learned from the Watchers became reliant on external instruction rather than developing their own capacity for wisdom. They gained technique without gaining the internal growth that makes technique truly useful. But perhaps most importantly, the premature revelation of divine knowledge disrupted humanity's natural developmental sequence. Like a plant forced to bloom before its roots are strong, human civilization became top-heavy, with capability but weak in the foundational wisdom necessary to support such power. The theological implications are staggering. If the Watcher's story is true, then human technological development isn't purely the result of natural evolution or human ingenuity. It's the consequence of a cosmic disruption, an unauthorized acceleration that threw off the natural timing of consciousness development. This would explain why our technological capabilities consistently outpace our wisdom. We're not just naturally immature compared to our tools. We're working with knowledge that was given to us before we were ready to receive it properly. But here's where the story becomes even more complex. The divine response includes a promise of eventual redemption. The Watchers aren't condemned to eternal punishment. They're held in a state of suspension until humanity develops the wisdom necessary to integrate their gifts properly. It's as if the entire drama, the rebellion, the corruption, the punishment, the eventual restoration, is part of a larger educational process. The Watchers' premature teaching created problems, but those problems themselves become teaching tools, ways for both angels and humans to learn about the proper relationship between knowledge and wisdom. This suggests a view of cosmic justice that's more educational than punitive. The consequences aren't arbitrary punishments designed to inflict suffering, but natural results designed to promote learning. The Watchers experience the isolation and limitation that comes from disconnecting knowledge from wisdom. Humanity experiences the chaos and violence that comes from gaining power without developing responsibility. But both experiences are temporary. The text hints at an eventual reconciliation where the Watcher's gifts will be properly integrated into human development, where their knowledge will serve wisdom rather than undermining it. What does this mean for our current moment? If we're living with the consequences of unauthorized divine teaching, if our technological capabilities really do represent knowledge we weren't ready to receive, then our task isn't to reject that knowledge, but to develop the wisdom necessary to integrate it properly. The question becomes, how do we catch up? How do we develop the spiritual maturity necessary to handle the godlike tools we've inherited? How do we transform information into wisdom, technique into ethics, capability into responsibility? The theological framework suggests that this development isn't just possible, but inevitable. The disruption caused by the Watcher's premature teaching creates the conditions for an eventual synthesis where divine knowledge and human wisdom finally align. We're not victims of cosmic accident. We're participants in a vast educational process that encompasses both angels and mortals, both knowledge and wisdom, both rebellion and redemption. The question is whether we'll learn the lessons quickly enough to avoid the worst consequences of our premature enlightenment. We live in the age of the Watchers. Every day, scientists and technologists face the same impossible choice that confronted Shemihaza on Mount Hermon. Do we share knowledge that could transform human existence, even if we can't predict or control all the consequences? Consider the Manhattan Project scientists who unlocked the secrets of atomic energy. J. Robert Oppenheimer, watching the first nuclear test, quoted the Bhagavad Gita, "Now I am become death, destroyer of worlds." Like Azazel teaching metallurgy, these modern Watchers had given humanity the power to transform matter itself and to destroy civilization in the process. But here's what makes the parallel so unsettling. Oppenheimer and his colleagues weren't motivated by pride or malice. They were driven by the same compassion that motivated the original Watchers, the desire to end human suffering, to give their people the tools necessary to survive against existential threats. They saw fascism as the flood, nuclear weapons as the ark. The knowledge they unleashed followed the same pattern as Azazel's gifts. Nuclear physics enables both clean energy and weapons of mass destruction. The same understanding of atomic structure that powers hospitals and cities also enables the annihilation of entire populations. Like the Watcher's metallurgy, the technique is morally neutral. The application reveals everything about the wielder's spiritual development. But our modern Watcher's dilemma goes far beyond nuclear weapons. Every major technological advance confronts us with the same fundamental question: how do we share transformative knowledge without destroying the foundations of the civilization we're trying to improve? Artificial intelligence presents perhaps the clearest contemporary parallel to the Watcher's story. AI researchers are literally trying to create artificial minds, to give silicon and algorithms something approaching divine consciousness. Like Panemu teaching writing, they're sharing knowledge that fundamentally changes what it means to be human, what it means to think, what it means to know. And like the original Watchers, AI researchers are divided between those who want to share their knowledge freely and those who believe such power requires careful control. Some argue for open source development, believing that democratizing AI will prevent any single group from gaining dangerous dominance. Others warn that uncontrolled AI development could lead to systems that make the nuclear age look quaint by comparison. The pattern repeats with genetic engineering. CRISPR technology gives us the ability to edit the human genome with precision that would have seemed miraculous just decades ago. We can potentially eliminate hereditary diseases, enhance human capabilities, even extend life itself. But the same tools that could create paradise could also create nightmares. Designer viruses, enhanced soldiers, genetic casts that make historical inequality look trivial. Social media platforms represent another echo of the Watcher's dilemma. The technology to connect every human mind on the planet, to share information instantly across continents, to give everyone a voice in global conversations. This should have been pure liberation. And in many ways, it has been. But it's also enabled propaganda, manipulation, and tribal divisions on scales that make pre-digital conflicts look local and contained. Each of these technologies follows the same progression described in the Book of Enoch. Initial promise, rapid adoption, unexpected consequences, growing awareness that the knowledge itself might be transforming humanity in ways we didn't anticipate or choose. But here's what makes our situation different from, and potentially more hopeful than, the original Watcher's story. We have their example to learn from. We know that knowledge without wisdom leads to corruption. We know that technical capability without ethical development creates chaos. We know that unauthorized teaching, knowledge shared without proper context, can be more dangerous than ignorance. The question is whether we can apply these insights before it's too late. Some modern thinkers are already trying. The effective altruism movement attempts to combine utilitarian ethics with rigorous analysis, asking not just whether we can develop certain technologies, but whether we should. AI safety researchers work specifically on the alignment problem, how to ensure that artificial minds remain beneficial rather than destructive as they become more powerful. Bioethics committees wrestle with questions that would have been purely theological just generations ago. What constitutes human nature? What enhancements are acceptable? Who gets to decide what improvements are beneficial versus corrupting? But perhaps most importantly, there's growing recognition that technical education alone isn't sufficient for handling powerful technologies. We need what ancient traditions called wisdom, the integration of knowledge with ethical understanding, the development of judgment that considers long-term consequences, the cultivation of responsibility that matches capability. This is exactly what the Uriel character represents in the Enoch text. Authorized teaching that embeds knowledge within wisdom traditions, that provides context and ethical frameworks alongside technique. What would this look like in practice? Technical education combined with philosophical training. Programming courses that include ethics modules. Medical schools that teach not just anatomy and pharmacology, but also the history of medical abuse and the principles of informed consent. Business schools that study both efficiency and justice, both profit and purpose. But individual education isn't enough. We also need institutional structures that can handle powerful knowledge responsibly. Just as the original divine order included checks and balances, watchers who observed but didn't interfere, authorized teachers who provided proper context, our technological society needs institutions that can slow down dangerous developments while accelerating beneficial ones. This might mean regulatory bodies with both technical expertise and ethical wisdom. It might mean international agreements that treat certain forms of knowledge like nuclear materials, powerful and beneficial when properly controlled catastrophic when misused. It might mean professional codes that prioritize long-term human flourishing over short-term technical achievement. Most importantly, it means recognizing that we're not the first civilization to face these dilemmas. The Watcher's story isn't ancient history. It's a template for understanding our current choices and their consequences. The principle emerges clearly. Pair every new capability with a practiced constraint. Publish the method. Publish the guardrail. Publish the oversight. The question that haunts every technologist, every scientist, every person working at the bleeding edge of human capability is the same question that tormented Semjaza. Do we share knowledge that could transform human existence, even knowing it could also destroy everything we're trying to protect? The Book of Enoch doesn't offer easy answers, but it does offer something more valuable: the recognition that this tension between knowledge and wisdom is fundamental to the human condition, and that navigating it successfully requires not just intelligence, but discernment, not just capability, but character, not just power, but wisdom. We are all watchers now. The question is whether we'll learn from their example or repeat their mistakes. What if the Watcher's story isn't really about angels at all? What if it's about us? About every human being who has ever held knowledge that could change the world and had to choose whether to share it. Standing here at the crossroads of artificial intelligence and human consciousness, of genetic engineering and human nature, of global connectivity and individual identity, we face the same impossible choice that confronted 200 angels on Mount Hermon over 2 millennia ago. We possess knowledge that could eliminate poverty, cure diseases, and connect human minds across the cosmos. We also possess knowledge that could enslave, manipulate, and destroy the very essence of what makes us human. The Book of Enoch offers no simple resolution to this dilemma, but it does offer something more valuable: the recognition that the tension between knowledge and wisdom isn't a bug in the system of consciousness. It's a feature. It's how we grow, how we learn, how we evolve from beings who merely possess information into beings who embody understanding. The Watcher's rebellion wasn't ultimately about disobedience or lust or pride. It was about love. Love so powerful that it was willing to risk damnation rather than watch beloved creatures suffer in ignorance. Their mistake wasn't in loving, but in believing that knowledge alone could save what they loved. We know better now. We know that information without transformation leads to corruption. That technique without ethics leads to destruction. That capability without wisdom leads to chaos. We know that the fire of knowledge must be kindled not in isolation, but within the hearth of developed character, surrounded by the walls of ethical understanding, tended by hands that have learned responsibility. But knowing these things intellectually and embodying them practically are 2 different challenges. The question that remains is whether we, as a civilization, can develop wisdom fast enough to handle the knowledge we've inherited. Can we catch up to our own capabilities? Can we become worthy of the godlike tools we've learned to wield? The Watcher's story suggests that this development isn't just possible, but inevitable. The disruption they caused created the conditions for an eventual synthesis where divine knowledge and human wisdom finally align. Their rebellion, their punishment, and their promised redemption are all part of a larger educational process that encompasses the entire evolution of consciousness. We're living in the middle of that process now. Every choice we make about technology and ethics, every decision we face about power and responsibility, every moment we spend developing not just our capabilities, but our character, all of it contributes to the eventual resolution of the dilemma the Watchers created. Their gift to us wasn't just metallurgy, astronomy, and writing. It was the recognition that technique without ethics is dangerous, but also that wisdom without capability is impotent. True development requires both. Information integrated with transformation, power guided by purpose. The angels are watching still. Not from Mount Hermon now, but from within our own choices, our own struggles to balance what we can do with what we should do. The question they faced on that ancient mountain echoes in every laboratory, every research institute, every moment when human beings hold the power to reshape reality itself. Will we choose knowledge without wisdom, technique without transformation, capability without character? Or will we finally learn to integrate the Watcher's gifts with the spiritual development necessary to use them wisely? The answer lies not in some distant future redemption, but in the choices we make today. We are all Watchers now. We all hold fire that could warm the world or burn it down. The question isn't whether we'll share what we know. In our interconnected age, knowledge spreads whether we choose it or not. The question is whether we'll develop the wisdom to share it well. The story of the Watchers' forbidden knowledge isn't finished. We're still writing it. With every breakthrough and every breakdown, with every innovation and every ethical choice. The angels who risked everything to lift humanity from ignorance are still waiting to see whether their sacrifice was worth the cost. The answer depends on us, on whether we can finally learn to be worthy of the knowledge we've been given, whether we can transform information into wisdom, technique into ethics, capability into compassion. The Watchers gave us fire. Whether we use it to illuminate the darkness or burn down the world depends on choices we're making right now. Choose wisely. The angels are watching.